everyone. It is 6:01, and so I'm going to call the WSESD board meeting to order. The meeting of the WSESD will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and to participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. Okay, and so now we are.
Did you want to read the
Yes, and it has been suggested that we may want to read some meeting norms, so I'm going to read the meeting norms that I think were discussed at the last meeting. Sure. 1, use sensitivity when discussing school matters. 2, engage in respectful and non-judgmental listening. 3, assume positive intentions. 4, be accountable for impact. 5, board discussions should include all voices equally. 6, be mindful of each other's time. And 7, shared responsibility. Okay, thank you, Ruby, for sharing those up with us. Fantastic. So now, are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay. So you will note, if you're looking at the agenda or if you are looking on Zoom, you will see that we have no administration here. That's because they're away for their admin retreat. So we will not have an admin report or a fiscal report or anything on that. We'll wait until the next meeting. So we will go to student matters, 5 to 10 minutes. Are there any students? Any of the students? Okay. All right.
I can explain myself if you'd like.
No, okay. This is student matters. I wanted to make sure if you were a student that you had the opportunity. Do we have any students in the online who would like to speak? Okay. I'm going to ask one more time. Any students? Please. Okay, I'm not really surprised. It is the summer, and I imagine many students are out enjoying the summer. So, okay. We'll move on to new business. The first item is Panorama follow-up questions and concerns. There were some questions and concerns that were expressed. Deborah, did you want to mention?
So, just looking at the minutes, there's a comment here that Chris Overtree had said that the asking is more important than the answers. And I remember certain principals talking about that, and I understand what that means. And then it says that many issues reflected in the survey's results are not caused by the school, but a reflection of conditions in our community and in society. So my question then would be, what measures are being developed to counter negative trends? Don't care where the trends are coming from, but we're talking about students and student safety, well-being. So that's one of my questions. Another issue that has come up, and I notice it in the last report and in the discussion that Paul Smith led, the term custom questions was raised. And so we have to remember what that means. But I think there's value each and every time to see those custom questions listed. The redundancy, it doesn't matter we need that for ourselves as board members, and this is also a meeting for community members, and they need to see this again and again. So I think we need to see what those custom questions are. The third thing I'd like to go back to is the discussion about percentile. And I'd just like to go back over that, that page and hear one more time. I'm not looking at the right one. And just get a breakdown of why we are so low. I remember at 10%, and that I think is of concern. I know Tim raised that issue. So those are some of my concerns that I'd like to go back to.
May I ask a clarifying question? And this is for Tim too, because I feel like I noticed something you said in the last meeting and I felt like I was missing a piece. The only materials I viewed were the February, the history of the February panorama,
Right.
and then the July panorama. And I'm wondering, was there some other spreadsheet or data point that just captured all the data that's been seen by anyone on the board at all? Okay.
I don't think so. Tim?
No, I don't think so.
No,
So with the 10% you were talking about, was that in the July?
that was in the most recent.
Yeah, that was the
That
one
was
that
in the most
ended
recent
June
one.
18th.
I think it's this spreadsheet.
Yeah, the spreadsheet
right,
had it.
that's
Yeah.
right. And the column does not say, unfortunately, I don't even have it in front of me right now. I don't think that column says percentile, does it?
Yeah, it says
the top of
national
it?
percentile.
Does it say
I believe it
percentile?
does.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Mhm. But,
But that is mysterious because, yeah, schools don't cause the problems, although they certainly are responsible for dealing with the problems. But why would a community like ours be so much lower in so many categories than other communities across the nation, than the national average? Why are we below the national average in items like people are kind to each other? I just don't understand it, unless there's a couple of things that concern me. First of all, what you said about asking is more important than the results. If you were asked to do a survey and you said, just do the survey, but the results really don't matter, we just want you to do it, that would be very discouraging to me to even do it. We want to increase response rates, and if we tell the students, do this, but the results really don't matter as much as you're just doing it, that's discouraging to me. I don't understand that reasoning. Second, if asking is important, then we should be really working very hard to increase that response rate a lot. And at the next meeting, I'll suggest the 5 strategies that Panorama themselves suggest for increasing the response rate. One, I'll be redundant, but one is to give students at least 2 weeks to do it. There's no reason that a school trip should interfere with the response rate. The second is to hype it. Before this was done, I didn't know that it was going to be done, but other schools really hype it. They say that Panorama is coming, and when it's done, they have bulletin boards with the little thermometers saying 40% response rate, 50% response rate. Some friendly competition, give a reward to the school with the highest response rate. There's a lot that we can do, but communicating that this is a big event to parents, to the board, to teachers, to really build it up, there's a lot that we can do. But this was done, it's typically been done without we even knowing it's done. And if I
can I
may,
just add to the response rate?
yeah,
And since you mentioned that, it's noted that the last Panorama report that was presented had an exceedingly low response rate. So then I'm wondering, well, how valid is the data then? If you have so few responding, and then you wonder, well, which subset did respond? It just doesn't feel like clean data to me if it's a really low response rate. So, I'm sorry, I just want to go to that, yeah.
I'd like to just remind all of us about the genesis of this climate report. This goes back to September 14th, 2021, when we got a letter from 167 community members, including teachers, students, alumni, parents, other people. And one of the things they called for is, I'll read it. Therefore, we call on the school district to engage a neutral party to conduct an independent investigation. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. That was calling for an investigation. But they also, there. We call on the district to engage an independent entity to facilitate a school culture survey for students and faculty and staff, specifically addressing safety and making the results publicly available. So this goes back to 2014, a call for a climate survey. And we hired Chris Overtree to do it, and he said, well, you're already doing it. But I just don't know how well we're administering it. Something else, one more thing that concerns me, and it was a little aside that Paul said about how it's administered. He said that, well, teachers, he imagines, walk students through the item line by line. Anybody who knows anything about survey research knows that's not good. It's threatening the reliability of the survey. You can't have one teacher explaining an item and another teacher saying, just here, do it. The responses are going to be different. That's just bad research.
I think in the first case, the teacher directing it and reading it, I just said the word, it's very teacher directed. You can tell from a tone of voice. So there's some issues, and then I think we'd like to see the teacher survey. We've asked for that numerous times.
Sean, you had your.
Yeah, I think these are all really excellent, valid points. I think there is such a thing as survey burnout. And everybody gets, every time you go to the doctor, you get 6 pages survey saying, how did your blood draw go? So it's just like it's too much. And I've actually talked with some people younger than myself, which is not hard to find, and they say, you know what, when I was in high school, we got surveys, I wouldn't answer them honestly. It's because it was like, it didn't have a good feeling. It didn't have a feeling of cooperation, and it didn't have a feeling that anything except they were trying to identify specific issues with specific people. So I think I have no idea, because this is, I'm a builder, not an educator. I have no idea how you could substitute something else other than a survey to try to find out what's going on. I mean, observation is probably one of the strongest methods, and I've done that at the Guilford School, and you see the student involvement, you see the dedication of the teachers, and then you even look at the panorama, and Guilford has some of the higher percentiles in the survey. So I don't know. I find it a little discouraging. It was all touted right at the beginning when Chris Overtree came, and he and Mark were having a discussion, and Mark said, we already do the panorama, and Chris said, oh, that's really good, because that's sort of the benchmark of surveys. But I think that what you brought up, Deborah, the low response rate, it might not be a clear reflection of what's going on in the schools. So I think it's a sieve. There are too many holes.
I appreciate kind of the attention to the Panorama survey. I feel a little bit, I think it's good for us to be able to talk amongst ourselves as the board, but I think really it requires having Paul in the room. And I honestly think even having Chris Overtree again so that we can, I remember the first time when he came, I don't think I was on the board at the time, but I heard him say, don't worry so much about the data, like whatever it was that was, you know, it's still, I get it, but it's still confusing to me because I want to be able to affect change through our governance work. You know, like what can we do to take the information and help us have a positive impact? I imagine he could speak a little bit more to round out our understanding of what he means, but he's not in the room now. And so I do feel like it feels like these are good questions, they're good things to be able to engage on, but I don't think we will be able to do anything more than kind of throw up our hands. And the only other thing I'd say is that I feel like when the board began this work and I was watching as a community member, I thought that great, this is wonderful. This is like the beginning of a culture shift in terms of how do we ask the questions, what are we asking? And culture shifts take time. And it could be that this work and these questions are what's gonna change the process. One example of that was, I think there was an acknowledgement at the high school level that only 2 classes took the survey. And when we there were a few of us who said, why that happened, or maybe that wasn't a good idea. And the current administration, the interim principal was like, yeah, that's true. And so that means that next year, maybe that won't happen, or maybe there'll be a more deliberate thought about
As
it.
a point of information, as a point of information, in the minutes, there is a correction to that. And this one is big. It says, however, after the meeting, talking about Paul Smith, after the meeting, he realized that this was an incorrect statement, meaning the statement before, that the survey was given only to 9th and 10th grade students. However, after the meeting, he realized that this was an incorrect statement. The survey was given to all grade levels, and he asked that this be corrected in the minutes. It's in italics. So that's a big shift.
Yeah.
And I now need to go back to that data and look at it to better understand it.
And I know we're comparing national versus, our own percentile, but when you were talking about, rah-rahing and promoting these at school level, I wonder how that changes and taints the information because everybody's all gung-ho, with we're doing this survey. And so they're all like, yeah, this is great. When that's just that day and it's not the true, it's not the true gauge of what's actually happening in the schools. So I worry too much if we're promoting it too much. We definitely need to promote it, but we don't want to go overboard and how that changes what the answers would be.
Yeah, a couple of things. I would refer to what Tim said, that, asking the question is more important than the outcome. When I read that, I thought, what? You gotta be kidding me. What does that mean? That asking the questions, it really didn't hold any water for me at all. And then, so I think, we don't need Chris Overtree here to discuss what is actually put on the survey, which were those words. And I think it'd be really, might be a really positive thing to get the faculty, 400 faculty, involved with what do you want to find out? What is important from your perspective as a teacher in the district? Do you have any observations? I mean, it's, I think Paul definitely is probably the most experienced, but yeah.
I agree
Excuse
with
me.
that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Eva's had her hand up for like 5 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry,
about that.
Eva.
I'll keep my eyes on that.
Hold on.
No, go ahead.
Eva, my apologies.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I appreciate everyone's thoughts, and for me, the data is critical. I think that once you start to understand data and you understand how it moves and influences and sort of the nuances of how a tiny bit of data, how you can analyze it, it becomes less intimidating and it actually becomes a very useful tool to create change. And one of the things, there's a couple of things that I'm missing from the data. First of all, with the Panorama survey, it looks like it's like a holistic approach where there is the student climate survey, then there is the parent climate survey, and then there's also the teacher climate survey. So when I look at the PowerPoint, I'm seeing the reflection of the students and what they see, but I'm not seeing it, the reflection of how the parents feel about the climate of the school and how the teachers feel. And hopefully we can get that information. The other aspect is I did ask in regards to the open-ended feedback, where is there a possibility that you could the student could write down more in an open format where their feelings, it's not a checklist, but just writing, a couple of sentences. And last night I downloaded the Panorama climate survey. It was a sample survey that's on their website, and it does give suggestions on a free response. And this can be done at the end of the survey. And it says and it talks about a variety of topics that might be interest to the schools to add to it. So one of the ones that I found interesting, one of the questions they suggested, one was, if you were a principal, what is the one change you would make to the school to make it feel safe? What is the one thing that students could do to make it feel safer? There's another question here. School belonging. This is a free response that could be added to it. What is the biggest thing that gets in the way of people in the school getting along with each other and getting along with each other better? If we had those answers from the students, how impactful would that be? Because then once you get the wording, you can start to analyze what the trends of the wording is. So for instance, if you have a group of students that are saying, I don't feel safe in the hallway, but I feel safe in the classrooms, but I wish the hallways were safer. You could analyze that language and then look at, okay, the wording that's coming up is hallway. So what can we do to make the hallway safer? I encourage you to not be intimidated by the data, to embrace it, because it's such a valuable tool. The other thing that I'm seeing here, I did with the survey questions, there was a couple of them, they did offer the complete questions that were asked. And Paul had said in one part, he said that, one of the things that they think that's happening is that the students may be bullying each other. And if you look at the safety questions, they go into detail. So one of them is, how often do you worry about violence for the parents? How often do you worry about violence at your child's school? If a student is bullied at your school, how difficult is it for him or her to get help from an adult? How likely is it that someone from your child's school will bully him or her online? Overall, how unsafe does your school feel? To what extent are drugs a problem at your school? This is a question that would be sent to the parents. For me, I just find this incredibly valuable. And as I learn and start to look at more deeper, I feel like there's a lot of value to hear from the teachers, the parents, and the students. The other thing in regards to the survey input about they're not getting enough students to fill out the survey. Well, if you actually have parents filling out the climate survey, I think there's a possibility to get a higher response, because then the parents could say, well, I got a notice about the climate survey. And then letting their children know that, yeah, we have to get this done. So I think there's a positivity that we could do. Like some of them do pizza parties, they do competitions, they put it in the mailer. There's a lot of ways that we can make it so, and also educating the parents about how important this is, how important the data is, and how we can use it to make our schools better and safer. Thank you.
So I'd like to, sorry.
Hi, my name is Jean Davis. I am the Executive Director at Branch's Pregnancy Resource Center. And I agree with this woman, I don't know her name, I'm sorry, who just spoke. Eva, I agree with her on the survey when it comes to identifying certain things with children in schools. My colleague that's with me today, she and I, we have actually went to the principal this year actually, and sat down with the high school principal and the vice principal to discuss the severity of safety in the schools. Reason being is I'm a survivor of human trafficking. I was trafficked for 20 years in 33 different states, and I was born in the United States. And so being in Vermont, in Brattleboro, I have built relationships between the city with John Parker, who's the city manager, and also Chief Hardy and Chief Howard, the police department, the fire department, and also the hospital. The only entity I have not built relationship with is the school district to help out the school in regards to the safety of our children, right? So many people do not know that there's a bill on the floor right now that are two of them, one in the House and one in the Senate, that's trying to pass to make legalized prostitution in the state of Vermont. A lot of people do not know that. Neither does the parents know that. They also don't know that there was a bust in the beginning of June of $200,000 worth of drugs that the police department seized, which comes to be with the gangs and with the Mexican mafia that's sitting at the border of Vermont. And right now, the Chinese and the Mexicans are debating on who is going to human traffic, let's use political words, and who's going to sell the drugs. So guess who's the target is? It's your children. And as a person, yes, we are pro-life. Yes, we have all that, and you could name it, put whatever you want to put on us. However, I'm here to help. We have a program set for to go in. And I wanted to talk to the superintendent. I've gone to their office. I've dropped off where we have pamphlets and things that show different things about if you are being human trafficked. I told someone, actually the vice president and Caroline was there when I said this to them, and there was a girl that was walking, and Caroline both saw this young woman walk down the hall, and she had a tube top on, her whole midsection was showing, and her thong was showing. I asked the principal, is there a dress code? Of course, I understand the way the world is and what's going on and all that. But I said to her, if I wasn't a Christian and if I was still in the street, she would make a good $500 for me. Because that is what they go for on an average of 15 to 20 minutes. I said, so it's not about whether or not they're trying to express or whatever. It's the fact that these children are being set up to be either raped, molested, prostituted. We already had a sex parlor that was taken down a few months ago. So this is nothing new in Brattleboro. So I'm a little frustrated because I'm reaching out and asking. I have I had the chief of police call me on a Saturday, ask me would I be willing to come to the ED because there was a woman that was being prostituted that was in the ER. I just sat and talked to the director of the ED. I have great relations with people. My thing is this, and as I told the vice president or the vice principal and the principal in that meeting, I was raped, I was prostituted through my high school years and my middle school years. I wasn't getting paid. I didn't officially start doing an actual transaction until I was 18. My father was my first trafficker at the age of 2. And what happened was, if a person said to me, if a teacher took the time and said, hey, what's going on? You're constantly getting in trouble. You're constantly going on. I would have told them I got raped yesterday by 4 people. So a lot of people don't understand when you're talking about safety and you're trying to do surveys and things like that, and some students don't want to answer, you need to look at what's going on in their life. And that's what we brought and presented to the principal and the vice principal, was at the end of the day, we're not here. I trafficked with transgenders, I trafficked with lesbians and gays. It doesn't matter who you are. The beautiful thing and the odd thing about human trafficking, they don't care what you are. As I told the senators of Vermont when I testified to them, we are considered products. You make money. How much money can you make? Drugs only come one time, one hit, that's it. But when a woman is laid on her back or a man is laid on his back, it's a constant rotation all day. Sorry to be vulgar, but this is reality. So my question is this: with the surveys and knowing that this is in your city, and understanding I do not live in Vermont, but I work here in this city, and for me working here, I'm very passionate to make sure that the city that I work with is safe, because there's drug dealers, there's prostitutes, there's dope fiends, there's gang members right down this street on Canal. The wash house is where they all prostitute at, which is 2 doors away from my center. So at the end of the day, this becomes reality and real. So I'm just wanting to know, as a citizen of the United States, of just being here as a worker, what is it, how is it that you guys are willing to go a step further? And like I love what you said, to ask the parents to understand what's going on, because I don't think that a lot of people actually know the reality of safety and what the real entity of looking like of safety really looks like. It's not what it looked like 20 years ago when I was in high school or 30 years ago.
Thank you. Can I ask, what's the name of your organization again?
Branches Pregnancy Resource Center.
Thank you for sharing that. And it feels like the content that you're bringing up, it's a lot, and it's something that we shouldn't. I don't want to set it aside and forget about it. But I also think that the people who really need to engage aren't in the room. Like you said, you've been in touch with the superintendent, you've been in touch with the principal. They're normally here. And I think that it's good for the board to know that you're presenting these resources, you have this passion, and it would be good to hear from them as well. Just to bring it back to the survey, I think that I want to keep in mind for myself that this survey doesn't encapsulate every piece of how we support our kids in the walls of the school. We have social workers, we have, there in each of the schools there's, there might be a social worker at each school now, but there's certainly counselors. And there are lots of ways that we can gather information, support kids, get some of the information around safety, personal safety, to make sure that we are heading off this any kind of danger to our children, particularly. But I think when it comes to the survey, it feels to me like from the board's perspective, there are 2 things that I think potentially we would be asking. One is for some level of deeper engagement with Paul and the team that works on Panorama. to unpack these things. You know, I don't know that it's gonna happen in this setting, in a board meeting. So I think there's that, saying, Paul, hey, we want, whether it's a subcommittee or a few people on the board who are really interested, who engage, and then come back with what did we talk about. And the other one is, and I don't know Chris Overtree. I watched Chris Overtree. I watched y'all engage with him, but it's possible that he's not the right fit in terms of, like, we want a second opinion, or we want someone who might use different words to help us understand how can we utilize this data. Just looking at the survey itself. But I don't know, but also I have only seen him come to this board once, maybe twice. But it could be that he is the best choice, and we're doing the best thing, but I just don't know. I don't know how much help we can be in moving it forward without those players in the room.
So we've talked about this for almost 30 minutes, I think. And I wonder if we can just pull it together and understand that this needs to be addressed at the next board meeting. Every single one of these points, when administrators are present.
I would like to bring up one more thing. First of all, thank you for your remarks, and thank you for coming. Today, I read the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which should be triangulated with Panorama data. This is, I only read the report for the state of Vermont, not the report specific to our middle school and our high school. But this report talks about the incredible risks and dangers that our kids are going through. It asks about everything from wearing a seatbelt, vaping, to experiencing forced sex. It was an eye-opener for me what a dangerous damn world too many of our kids live in. And one stat, for example, middle school students in the state of Vermont, 3% report having sex. This is middle school. But the bullying, it gets to a lot of the points that we're talking about, health and safety. So I encourage all the board members to review the state results, and eventually we'll have the results, I hope, from Paul for the middle school and the high school, to hear what the students say about the risks and dangers of going to school in our district.
Okay. So I'm going to say one thing, and then I'm going to let Eva speak, and then I think we're going to move on. I just want to, when I set the agenda, I hadn't realized that the admin weren't going to be here. But it felt to me like it was important enough that the board meet, even not having the admin here. And this is all information that we can bring back to the admin for the next meeting. But I think it's well worth the board having a discussion about it to sort of voice the concerns. But the other thing that when you were speaking before, that and I think other people may have touched on it. You talked about other creative ways, and I can't remember exactly who else talked about that, but what I wondered, actually, I think somebody else mentioned about parents. And may have been Eva,
Sure.
yes. And so the thought I had was, I wondered if something is sent out to the parents, here's a link to yours, maybe including a link to the students, access for the student to utilize the survey, because if the student is busy at school and not able to do it during the day, or whatever happens, there's a field trip or whatever, I think it does make sense to have it open for longer than just one day. But I wonder if we can, if the administration can be a little creative in their way of making this accessible to parents and students.
Can I just point out one more thing? The board is responsible for seeing that policies are upheld. This gets right to policies H1, school community relations, and H2, parental involvement policy.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Eva, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to thank the citizen, the community citizen. I don't know, I didn't get the name. I apologize. I wanted to thank you for sharing your story and how much you went through, and and your vulnerability. So I thank you for that. And I think for me right now, the data, I think knowing because first of all, we need to know if the data for the parent climate survey was done, and what is the sequence of when it's done. So is it done at the same time? Is it done 6 months later? When is the teacher climate survey done? And I think we need to see all three of the data to really get a sense of what is happening at our schools. That's it.
Thank you, Eva. Ken, 2 seconds?
Yeah, it's hard to make parents do this. Having done it, previously, middle school, we had the little things, you try to take the time to do it. A lot of times you just walk right by it. You can't force parents to do it. Unless you do valet parking for all the parents that come in and they have to fill it out before they get their keys to go home. But you can't, whether we have a policy on it or not, you can't force parents to do it.
I found this conversation very useful. And I also found it very useful to have this conversation amongst ourselves, because we could hear the narrative as against asking a question and getting a response, asking a question, getting a response. So it's been a very, very different experience. And interesting to have a meeting just amongst ourselves to talk about this. So I just want to say thank you.
I do want to say one last thing about parents not being forced to do it. Panorama is very explicit that it is optional, that you're not forced to do it. It's really encouraging and making it a fun thing, and not, oh, you have to do this thing. It's you're part of the school. We're a team. You're part. Let's do this together. So they really do make an effort, and from what I downloaded, to know that it is optional.
Thank you. Now we are going to move on to the G8 Local Action Plan. Tim, I think this was your...
Oh, I printed out policies, but I haven't got that yet. Okay, I wish I had the policy in front of me.
This is your...
Oh, great.
It's your email.
Okay, I just think that this is long overdue. The Policy and Amendment Committee is going to discuss this, but that doesn't preclude us moving forward with the policy as it's now written. And the policy calls for an actual team to be presented and discussed with the entire board. I believe the protocol in the policy is that the superintendent makes recommendations of parents, students, staff members, and board members to be on a team to ensure that there's continuous improvement in the learning process. We haven't done this. In my mind, there's not a team. If you want to call it a team, it's very, very disparate. So what I think that this board should do is to decide on representatives from the board to be on an actual continuous improvement plan team.
It sounds like you're... Oh, Ruth.
If you were in the middle of trying to make a motion, you can go ahead, but
No,
I don't. Okay.
no, not yet.
I guess my in the spirit of collaboration, because it feels, I've read that policy. I have also noticed that we are not in compliance with parts of that policy.
Thank you.
But I think in order to get there and be in compliance, I think we need to engage with the superintendent. We need to engage with whoever else. There's a leadership team that's working on, that local action, whatever the action plan is. So I feel like having them in the room would be good, but I do really appreciate the flagging of that. This is a policy, it identifies a team and engagement, and that's not happening at the level that I think it should. But I would like to say that in a room with the people who have been making the decisions and ultimately come to some kind of collaboratively come to an agreement about what is this going to look like, where is it going. I don't think that's necessarily an easy process, but I certainly would like them to be in the room.
So what I'm hearing, can we put this on the agenda for the next regular board meeting?
We can certainly do that. And if I neglect to include that in my email to the board, saying these are the items that I have for the next agenda, please feel free to prompt me with that suggestion. Okay, so now we move on to communications, and Kim, you had asked.
I did. It came to my notice because Ruby forwarded off a couple of emails that not all of the board was included on communications to the board. With the majority of board members were on there, but not all of them. And I want to know the SOP of what we're going to do for that communication that's coming to most of the board, and how we're going to make sure that all of the board members are included on those emails.
And just for clarity,
I'm confused. Sorry.
There were emails that were sent from the public where most of the school board members.
So it was a public had sent it? Okay.
Yes, and it was sent to most of the school board members.
Okay.
But I know I was not included on one, and I don't believe Sean was included on it. And it was, Ruby happened to notice that I wasn't on and forwarded it to me. But how are we catching those emails? Because if it's being sent to most of the board, it needs to include all the board members or forward it to them, or we're.
That's a good point, thank you. Best case scenario is that a member of the public would choose to send to all the board, but I think we can, unless there is objection, then I guess it can just be forwarded out, one email to include forwarding this to all board members, make sure everyone sees it, even the board members who may have already gotten it,
right,
so that they are aware that it is being forwarded out to everybody.
Right.
With the additional notation of please don't respond to all.
Absolutely.
That.
Absolutely. And of course, there are sometimes emails that are only supposed to be going to you, to the chair and the vice chair, and that's completely different.
Yeah.
But it's the one where you have a quorum of board members on that email chain, and it needs to be shared with every single board member, not just a specific group of board members.
Okay.
I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about, but I do know that I look at who is receiving a given email, and I will on occasion see someone missing and say it seems that you were inadvertently not on this email, and I'm pointing to the board member, but that's tedious.
Absolutely.
And it can easily be missed.
Absolutely.
And I don't do it every time.
Right.
Right. So I think you're raising a really important point about that we all need to be in the loop.
Right.
Yes. And how are we going to do that?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the rhetorical
Yes,
question.
absolutely.
Right? Exactly.
Because we need to make sure we're, in their open meeting issues at that point, if not every board member's involved in those emails.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, so now, is there more discussion?
Well, on that particular issue that you just raised, it's sort of open-ended at this point. We're not quite sure what to
Right,
do.
absolutely.
And I hate to leave something like that, but maybe that involves talking to IT in some
Absolutely.
way.
Yes, if maybe there's a, you
And I
know,
would think to go to Paul Smith initially.
yes, if, if
right.
there's, if there's something on the website, if you need to email the board, the entire board, click this,
It's
and it
automatic.
does everybody's email.
I mean, I have that in terms, we do it in terms of our directory,
Oh,
but that's
absolutely.
something very different.
Yes.
I realize what you're saying, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and I know we could do this personally, but I wanted it on the minutes just so
Right.
the entire public was aware at the same time.
Thank you. So now, we will move on to the clerk's report.
I'm sorry. The communications, aren't you going to talk about the seat, the open seat?
Oh, the communications council? That's under the committee
committee.
reports. This is just about communication generally
Yes.
on the board.
Sorry.
We'll talk about that later.
Mea culpa.
Okay, so we're back to the clerk's report. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 25, 2023?
So moved.
Thank you, Ruby. Is there any discussion?
I have two small motions. One, Deborah already pointed out that there's a note in the minutes saying that Paul Smith was asked to insert a correction to what he said in the meeting. That just can't be slipped into the minutes, but it has to be brought up before the full committee at the next meeting. So I move that the note regarding Paul Smith's correction be deleted from the July 25th minutes.
You move that his,
I
the,
move that the note regarding Paul Smith's correction be deleted from the minutes.
okay, Deborah, do you have the minutes that he can read?
It's right here, it's right here.
Perhaps Tim can read what it is he thinks should be deleted?
Can I read it?
Please.
Okay. It's in italics and it's in brackets, and it has to do with Panorama. Okay, it's under the Panorama presentation. And it reads, however, after the meeting, he realized that this was an incorrect statement, dash. The survey was given to all grade levels, and he asked that this be corrected in the minutes. Period.
So is the motion to delete that section of the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Ruby?
Yeah, I think she was first.
Well, I was just about to say that I think it's fine to delete it from those minutes because we've read them into today's minutes and we've added them to today's minutes. That was,
I don't want to belabor this, but actually, according to Robert's rules, when you make amendments to the minutes, it's sufficient just to say minutes were approved as amended. You don't really have to include all this discussion.
no, but we talked about it when we were talking about the panorama.
Oh, right.
So,
Yeah.
yes, that's what I was referring to, Tim, that
Gotcha.
Deborah read that when we were having the discussion on the panorama.
Thank
So
you.
we have put it in tonight's minutes
So
instead.
the correction is already on the record.
Yes, for
Okay.
tonight's, but we can take them out of that because they weren't in those minutes. It wasn't part of the meeting. So Tim is correct, we should take them out.
Right.
But with what we said during the panorama, we can include that.
In today's minutes.
Yes, in today's minutes, with what Paul had said, it was actually the entire high school.
Right.
Okay, that's great, that's great.
I have a few things to say. I think one is that this has been acknowledged in the past, and this is something that came up with the transition from Barb to Mo. I think historically, this district has not, if you amended the minutes, the minutes that were on record were not changed. And so they stood as they were. We just talked about that and talked about shifting that practice. I don't know, I have not checked to see if they are changing. So if we were to amend the minutes, are they going back and being removed or added or whatever? And that, I think, is a critically important piece, because my guess at why Paul asked the secretary to put it in there is that if these are standalone minutes and they have, that's a really glaring, that's a big error.
That's an ouch. That's an
And
ouch.
he knows that's a big error. He doesn't want to be on record stating incorrect facts just because of a slip, because he was in the middle of a thing, whatever. And so I get and I sympathize with that feeling, but I tend to agree with Tim. I'm a person of process. It's not a good idea to just slip in something in parentheses that says, something that didn't happen in the meeting. But I wonder if, I think, to me, something that could be a potential compromise, it would be, yes, take them out as they appear now, but allow for a footnote or an asterisk that pulls them below and says, frames it in such a way that Paul Smith informed the secretary of what is said, and the board was informed at the subsequent meeting. Something like that, which actually, if it's out of the minutes and it's a secretarial note, would feel more appropriate to me than just completely eliminating it.
What would you think of something that said, please see minutes on this topic dated such and such, for correction, or something like that?
Like if there was a footnote, it could say, please see the minutes of this date for corrected information. It could say anything, but I think if I hear Paul, and if I pretend I'm Paul for a second, I think that it's that having them with that incorrect information where someone could try to scan and understand and then pull it and then use it is scary. And so how do we address that?
So I'm going to ask Anne, and I believe Carrie is on here as well. So I'm going to ask if either of them has a response in terms of a footnote sort of addition.
I agree that a footnote addition would probably be the best course of action, but it really is amended by our discussion this evening. But I think just to make it clear, because Ruby's right, just added at the bottom a note to of the last minute, just because Ruby's right. Paul doesn't need to be on record making such a giant mistake if he corrected it immediately. That's just what I think, and I think it's probably, it might not be entirely according to Robert's rules, but I think it's according to common sense.
But that is very different, and I appreciate what you're saying. That's very different from what I'm looking at on the page. So going back to these minutes as they exist, I feel that this italicized statement should be removed. It's not appropriate to make a change to the minutes in the middle of the minutes, because the minutes reflect the reality of the meeting. I agree, do an addendum and make it very, very formal, but I am not happy with the way these minutes look right now.
I think the easiest.
I agree with Deborah. I thought that's what I said, but I guess the words didn't come out right.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne. Sean?
Well, one way to correct it at all would be to do nothing except, use Tim's suggestion of dropping it and have Paul speak at the next meeting and say, I made an error, and I'd like to correct it. I'd like to have it in the minutes, and it's done deed.
Well, so a motion has been made to delete a portion that was in italics and read by Deborah. Are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of removing that portion that was read from the minutes of July 25, 2023, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Sean,
Since I was not present at the meeting, I'm very glad to abstain and remove myself from this tedious conversation.
well, thank you, Sean. That means that we need to do a roll call vote.
Uh-huh.
So, all those in favor of removing the italicized portion, please raise your hand. So there is Kim and Ruby and Tim and Deborah and Ann
And Eva,
and Eva. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And
I abstain.
Sean and I am abstaining, of course. So that part is approved. It is removed.
Thanks. And if I can just respond to Ruby's comment. Yeah, I have checked and previous minutes are amended.
Oh, there.
Ruby,
Oh, there.
Robin does a great job.
Great.
oh, great,
Wonderful.
good. Wow.
And Tim, did you have another?
Yeah, I'm gonna skip it.
Okay.
Enough minutes have been spent on minutes.
I am not making this a motion at this point in time, but to speak to that concern of somehow capturing in the corrected minutes, I wonder if a motion would be appropriate to ask Robin to put a secretarial note at the bottom, not in the minutes, but have her own secretarial thing. But I don't know, I mean, I guess I could move that, and then you can decide if you wanna do that. So I move that the board direct Robin to add a secretarial note reflecting the correction that was removed.
So I'm gonna ask a question that is, you're asking for this particular point here?
Yes.
So maybe my question isn't really a question for now, but maybe a question to think about, is this something that the board will choose to make going forward if there is a correction? Is there some, is that gonna be the procedure that the board asks?
My hope is that this doesn't happen very often. Like, I think this was a very specific thing that happened. He misspoke and was like, oh my God, and corrected it, and it was a big deal. And my guess is that Robin said, it is a big deal, I see it, I understand, and put it in the best way she could, and she's not here to defend her decision. But, so I think it would be good for the secretary particularly, but the board to absorb this information and learn from it, but hopefully, we don't see
So this is a one-time ask?
I think so,
Okay,
personally.
okay. So a motion has been made.
Can I just ask a question? I know it's gonna be redundant what I'm asking, but your motion is very specific only to the minutes of July 25, that in this one particular case, the clerk is asked to make an addendum at the end of this to issue this correction. This is not a carte blanche to do it ever again.
I would say that that's a correct statement. yes.
Absolutely,
I mean,
then I'm okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm okay.
I do think the clerk has, responsibilities and may choose to interpret things different ways, but
Absolutely.
certainly that's more in keeping with what the spirit of what I'm saying, yes.
Because if this were to happen again, I would like it to be isolated
Yeah.
and not just a quick correction at the end. Okay, as long as it's just for these minutes. Okay.
Any other questions or discussion on this? Okay, so Ruby has made a motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so Robin will make that secretarial note at the end of the minutes. Thank you. So now we are back to the minutes. We are back to so the motion has been made to approve the minutes with the deletion of the italicized portion and with the addition of a secretarial note reflecting the correction. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of July 25, 2023 with the amendment and the addition of the secretarial note, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you. We are now moving on to public comment on non-agenda items. 10 minutes. Anyone making a comment can expect a response that falls into one of the following categories. Receive an acknowledgement of the comment with no further action planned. Receive an immediate response by the board chair. Administration would be directed to contact and respond to the person. Clarification sought from the administration for a specified meeting. The topic would be added to a specified future board agenda. The matter would be referred to an executive session. Public hearing would be held on the matter. Is there anyone, would you like to speak?
Yes. Sorry, so I apologize for speaking. I know you guys were, and I didn't realize.
Can you just say your name again?
Oh, sorry. I'm Jean Marie Davis. So one of the reasons why I came, well, there was a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons why I came is because on your guys' agenda, you have the sexual abuse investigation update, and that's kind of what I was speaking towards and about. With what you just read on the public notes or comments and stuff, my request would be if myself and Caroline Gold, who is my client's programs coordinator, if we can come and either present or talk to you guys for 5 minutes to talk about our healthy relationship program that focus on human trafficking and other things that are dealing with children in the classroom, whether they're high school, middle school, and the appropriateness of between the teachers and the children. It doesn't matter any gender, it's geared for everyone, but also to the different signs and being able to recognize when someone is being trafficked. As I told the principal, we are not state mandators. We are privately a private organization. However, if there was a high school student to come to our center and were to say, hey, this is going on, there are protocols at my center. The police department and the fire department, we all have a procedure that we go through if a woman were to come. If it was a student, I explained to them that I would reach out to this high school or whoever the point of contact would be, and we would work with them in getting that person safe, also with the parents and stuff, because once again, we're not state mandators, but because they're under 18, we would do that. I do work with Safe Place. I know a lot of people know about Safe Place, but if we were able to come and just present to either the board or everyone for I really just need 5 minutes of your time, I'd appreciate it. And then you guys could say no or get out of here or, go to Timbuktu, and that's fine, because I'm originally from Cali, so that's fine.
Perhaps I'll give you my email address, and perhaps you can and send the vice chair and I sort of an outline of what your presentation would be, and maybe we can try and schedule you for another.
Can I ask you a question? Can we ask questions? In this section?
Yes.
Where are you located?
I'm located on 26 on Bird Street.
Oh, so you are located here in Brattleboro?
Yes, yes, we're on 26 on Bird Street. We were actually, a few months ago, there was a murder that happened next door to us.
Yeah.
So that's where that's why I said that this is kind of personal, because there's children involved, so, yes.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you've engaged with the principal of the high school and possibly with the superintendent.
I have a meeting set with him on this coming Tuesday
Okay.
at 11 a.m.
That was really my
Yeah.
question.
Because what had happened was they suggested, thank you, they had suggested I speak to the superintendent, and I called, and they kind of did a pacify, like, okay, yeah, they'll get back to you. And I kind of waited, called again, oh yeah, no. And then I went and I gave the brochures to them to show them, you know, this is what we do, which is taking away the whole, like I said, yes, we're pro-life and stuff, but it's not focused on that. It's focused on the safety and how to recognize to get women, children, men out of that. And I didn't. And then it actually happened yesterday. I called and said, when do you guys have a meeting? And then that's all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can set up a meeting with you. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just come see you guys.
Yeah, so just send us an email. My email's on the back and Deborah's is on the front.
Awesome.
Just give us an idea of what your outline of your presentation would be.
And Kelly is the chair.
Kelly's.
Yes, okay,
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there, oh, Eva.
You have your hand up? Yeah, I just wanted to add, for the organization she was talking about, there's another one called Truckers Against Trafficking. I don't know if you are familiar with them, but
Yes.
they did a mobile program where because truckers are, you know, always on the road and they're seeing trafficking victims. So they were targeted, and they did this sort of kitchen table pamphlet of, you know, how do you identify a trafficking survivor? And it's been really, really successful. So it sounds like you already know about them. So when you were talking, that just brought up that organization for me.
Yes, so because I'm a survivor, so understand, so I was trafficked I'm 38 now, or I will be 38 next month. So from the age of 2 to 29, I was trafficked. Actually, my son is here. He's a product of the human trafficking with one of my pimps one of the many pimps that I had. However, when I came to New England, I found out 3 years after I got out of that life that I was a survivor. That's when I actually got involved, and I know almost every organization in New England, and then throughout the United States, all the way from California down to Florida. It's to the point where I now have at our center, if there was a woman, I was telling the ED director yesterday, if there is a woman who needed to get out of the state, I have it set up to where we can actually transport her to a safe house that will get her to a place. Because they had to transport me from California to New Hampshire, because I live in New Hampshire now. But that's the severity of the situation. So the truckers, they understand the different spin. I come and understand that Chief Hardy, when she sat down with me, questioned and grilled me to see if I knew what I was talking about. So the difference with me is I come with an insight of not only just being trafficked, but I have trafficked women. I have been my own, what they call renegade, which means I traffic my own self. So I give you a different understanding of really what the eons of everything looks like.
I look forward to your email. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment? more time. Anyone else, public comment? Okay, we will be moving on then. The sexual abuse investigation, I have emailed Attorney Host to get an update on that, and she has not gotten back to me, but I'm not sure if she, I'm still waiting for a response. Then unless there's nothing else on that, we will move on to policy and amendment. Is anything for readoption?
Yeah, the Policy and Amendment Committee I move that the WSESD School Board readopt H7 Leadership Councils.
Okay, a motion has been made. Is there any discussion? Sean?
Yeah, I'm really sorry actually to bring this up at this point, but I was a little confused on page 3. It says if a school board holds a hybrid meeting, and then goes on and talks about physical location and so forth.
I'm sorry, wait 1 second. Let me just get there. Yes, I see. Good.
And then down below it says being involved in the board discussions and decision making.
Okay, can you just speak a little louder, please?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
right.
So what I wondered when I read it was, we're talking about leadership councils, and so I was confused by the terminology school board
Okay.
and board down at the bottom.
Mhm.
It didn't make any sense to me because there is definitely a difference between a school board and a leadership council.
My understanding of this is the first section that you referred to is a very specific reference to Act 1 of 2023. And it does use the language school board. It does not use the language leadership council.
Yeah, I realized that, but
yes.
the thing that confused me was that the whole thing is the leadership council, H7, and then all of a sudden it talks about school board, so it just seemed like something had gone off the tracks.
Okay. This section is about the legality of whether a leadership council meeting needs to be recorded or not. And we went back and forth with the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, and had 2 different interpretations
I'm aware
of that.
too, yeah.
So,
Well, couldn't you just, instead of saying if a school board, if a leadership council, and then down lower leadership council?
yeah, I don't know that we can do that because I think that paragraph is very specific to Act 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
To speak to what Sean has raised, thank you for raising that, because I remember seeing the wording as well, and then I forgot. My assumption was that, leadership councils are an advisory body or committee, but an advisory body of this board. Like it seems to me that that's a clear fact. And so my assumption was that there was, that when it said school board, what it really meant is anybody representing the school board in any capacity. And it is very clearly laid out that it is an advisory capacity. That's what a leadership council is. So I wonder if there would be language that could be added to not remove, to say school board and any advisory body such as a leadership council would continue. I realize that this is a document that's done by committee, and rather, so if there are changes, I'm not sure what the protocol is for our board making changes and then voting on it, or it kicks it back to the committee.
It kicks it back to the committee automatically.
And
yes.
actually in that regard, I want to acknowledge that we did receive the board received an email from a Dummerston Leadership Council member who had raised a concern that I saw the wisdom of, which is it is August. There are a very few people in this room and probably in the Zoom room. And I do think that for many months we've heard via the administrative report from leadership councils who are really asking, how do we get information to you? How do we know what you want from us? That's a refrain. And this is a good example of something that I do think that if we allowed for some time to send this deliberately to each of the leadership councils to say, I know you're just starting up, but the board will be acting on this in, even potentially October. That's the goal. It would be, I think that would be wise, and it would give some acknowledgement to the existing leadership councils, and this is about them, and it's the biggest way in which we have a voice, or at least an advisory capacity in each of the schools, and I think it'd be a good way to honor that. I realize that the work of the Policy and Amendment Committee is hard, and they have toiled over this for many months, and that doesn't, I make this suggestion that does not take away. I think they've done amazing work, particularly on this policy, which I've been watching for quite some time. But I still think that it was a suggestion that was within that email that we received that I think is wise.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Ruby. Speaking from my experience at the BUHS Leadership Council, this has been discussed to the point of exhaustion. They would have, I can't speak for them, but I think my feeling is that they would have nothing else to add to this policy at all.
Can I make a response? I have that email in front of me from the community member, and we have been working on this policy. I pulled the minutes of September 6, 2022. So that's 11 months. And that particular meeting was about this policy. To my understanding, this board functions 12 months out of the year. And if we don't, I don't know why I'm here right now, quite frankly. This policy has been publicized. It has been publicized by Barb Nowakowski, by Mark Spino, the superintendent, meeting with leadership councils. On September 6, 2022, there's a notation that there will be orientation for all of the chairs and clerks of every leadership council, and that orientation was held on 2 occasions. The issues that exist in this email talking about the code of conduct, the code of ethics. The word used was mandating a code of ethics felt questionable. That code of ethics did not come from the Policy and Amendment Committee. The code of ethics, as well as the abbreviated Robert's Rules, as well as an agenda that leadership councils are following to make sure that they are really covering all bases. That is part of a policy being implemented by administrators. And that is what took place at several meetings that, and we witnessed the policy going from policy to actual practice put in place by the superintendent. So I'm not sure exactly what else I can say in response to this email that puts up a questionable roadblock 11 months into a very, very public presentation of this policy H7. This is not a secret in this district, and I certainly have been very clear. I've commented on your edits publicly at a board meeting. So none of this is secretive. And it's a very interesting and disturbing approach to suddenly saying the policy has not been presented to leadership councils and the public. Thank you.
Could I call the question, please?
Sure. Question has been called, and my understanding is we are now ready to vote.
Well, we vote on the question, call the
Vote on
question.
the question.
Thank you very much. That was a test for everyone. So now the question's been called, so all those in favor of,
Can I just ask, can we just clarify, just for the public, just what that means in calling to
Well,
question?
because,
Just calify what calling to question means.
oh, yeah,
Yes,
just,
please.
we'll end discussion and have a vote.
Thank you.
On the matter at hand, on the motion.
so all those in favor of ending discussion per the question being called, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed or abstentions?
Nay.
Okay, so we are going to do a roll call vote. So, the question has been called. All those in favor of ending discussion, please raise your hand. So there's Sean.
You want to
Oh, sorry. I mean, I question whether we actually need to be voting on calling the question.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
calling the question is just immediate.
No, it's okay.
Okay, well, I've gotten in trouble before for not holding a vote, so I'm going to hold the vote. Okay, so, but I thank you for bringing that up, Ruby. Kim, Deborah, I saw Tim's hand,
And Tim.
and Eva.
Mhm.
Okay, and Ruby, were you
I,
abstaining or?
no, I'm saying no.
Okay. Okay, Ruby's opposed.
Okay. Well,
a
I'm gonna,
question-
oh, sorry. I'm
Eva?
gonna abstain. I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. Okay, well, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 1, and 1. So we are now ending debate. So now we are moving on to the actual motion to re-adopt H7 leadership councils. All those in favor of re-adopting H7 leadership councils, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed or abstentions?
Nay.
Abstaining.
Okay, so now we're gonna do a roll call vote. So all those in favor of H7 leadership councils being re-adopted, please raise your hand. Sean, Tim, Deborah,
And,
Ann. Okay, and that's. And Ruby, you were,
No.
and
Abstain.
Kim is abstaining. So that is 4, 2, 1, and 1. Okay. So we have now adopted H7 leadership councils. What I would say is any of these policies that are not mandatory, Deborah will correct me if I'm misspeaking, they're all subject to change. So if there is something that is glaring or something that changes and we need to update the policy, there's always the possibility to do that. And so I would ask that any of the board members and any member of the public, if you have any concerns about anything existing or upcoming policies, to please feel free to communicate about that.
May I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Because although I'm very happy that we have a policy, and I would just suggest or recommend that each of us as board members send an email to each of the chairs of the leadership councils to inform them of this, and to the extent that there's discomfort, or I think many many leadership councils do know and have talked about it ad nauseum, but last year there were some leadership councils who didn't have a board representative, so I don't know about them. There's one that didn't meet at all. So to the extent that we can take a moment now to deliberately say, hey, just so you know, here's the leadership council policy. And to the extent that people have a question, invite them to come to a policy and amendment committee. That's where the work is done. I think that would be a wise move.
I think Deborah and I can make sure that goes out to all the leadership.
I think at this point, it also involves the individual who implements the policy. And that very clearly is the superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that that is where this next step abides. It does not abide with the chairs, it abides with the superintendent. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate the outreach. I do think that at this point, the shift is the implementation of the policy.
I think, just to clarify, I think my suggestion was we each, we as board members are delegated to or assigned to a leadership council. So it was really as simple. It was really just, I have a relationship with the chair who is of Putney. That's who I'm assigned to, and for EES. And so my intention was, hey, by the way, this happened, and I want to make sure you know. That's all. But I agree. I think that it is the implementation of the policy is in the administration, but just in terms of relationship building between the board representative and the chair.
So is your suggestion that each board member send it to the chair of the leadership council that they are on?
That's what was my suggestion.
Okay.
Sorry,
I didn't hear that. I did not hear
Sorry
it that way.
about
I heard it very differently.
Oh no,
And
that's
this
what
is
I
just
meant.
for your information, and perhaps would you be suggesting that if there are questions, they may reach out to superintendent or to attend?
My suggestion, and this is really just my suggestion in my words, is that if there were a leadership council chair who said, wait a second, what's going on? Then, the invitation is, this work has been happening at the Policy and Amendment Committee. And so if you're interested in this policy, if you're interested in policies in general, that work is happening in that committee. They're publicly warned meetings, but sometimes people aren't paying attention. So, if someone starts paying attention, that's where they should be paying attention, rather than, anything else,
So I appreciate what you're saying. That is a very easy email and a very cordial and polite email to write. Mm-hmm. I am going to say that the superintendent has met with every leadership council in the orientation, and this has not been a one-shot deal. And okay. Thank you.
Moving on to board matters training, and now we go to leadership council updates. How appropriate. So do we have any updates on leadership councils? I recognize that it is summer, and quite possibly all the people who are on the leadership councils are enjoying their summer. Do we have any updates?
Actually, BUHS Leadership Council has been discussing how to improve membership on the council, and they're pretty successful, I think. Typically, the high school has, last year they had about 14, 15 people to attend every meeting, but they want more parents, so they're already working on that. So kudos to Lisa Ford and working with Mark to increase membership.
Well, if you have any secrets that you might share with the other leadership councils, please feel free.
I can, a fun one, the Putney Leadership Council has not met, although we've had some dialoguing via email because there's a Putney block party happening on Friday, sadly during our board retreat, so I cannot attend. But the leadership chair is dressing up as Leadership Council Barbie. And there will be a booth and some cupcakes or things like that. And that is a playful, fun effort in a playful, fun environment to try to engage, because we don't know what the magic bullet is either for getting people to show up. But I thought that was an innovative approach. It definitely had some discussion points, and we will further discuss it in our meeting. But yeah, so that was fun.
Nice. Eva.
I just wanted to second what you had said, Kelly, is if you have any tips, because we are still at Oak Grove, still trying to get the Leadership Council going. So if you have any tips or suggestions, that would be really helpful. And that's it.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else on leadership councils, we will move on to board subcommittees. Is there anything anyone would like to share?
I would like to share something from the Communications Council. We met, and the Communications Council is me and Robin. We met with the primary focus of discussing in more depth what was mentioned at the last meeting around trying some creative approaches to attracting board candidates. And I did send an email to the board to discuss today possibly around some language that Robin drafted after the meeting around that could be utilized in a letter out to our school community, and also just that highlighted what the compensation is, that highlighted what the expectations are. So there's that piece, that blurb that she drafted. And then we also discussed a more meet and greet style event that was raised as a suggestion at that meeting. We talked about we kind of mulled over locations and when and where and things like that, and wanted to present some thoughts and recommendations on that if it's something we wish to do. I do think a question is, right now the due date is for letters of interest, I think is the 22nd of September. And so we're committed to waiting till then no matter what. To the extent that we feel that there could potentially be, or we have candidates waiting in the wings or who've come forward, perhaps we don't need to work that hard to get the word out, but perhaps we want to just in terms of engagement. I don't know. And also, we've had candidates who've shown interest and then withdrawn in a very last minute capacity, so that could happen again. So I'm happy to read the blurb. I'm happy to recount what the suggestions are, but that's the basis of what we discussed and wanted to bring forward today.
Well, full disclosure, I have gotten 3 names. I do have to follow up with them. But with the deadline for September 22nd being publicized, I do have a concern about, unless we publicize something else saying that we are changing the deadline and giving a certain amount of time for someone to then respond in a, I'm not sure what the, I would be concerned about jumping now before the deadline unless the board made some decision to change the advertisement that was publicized.
I guess perhaps my words are not clear. I think that we have committed ourselves to the 22nd of
Okay.
September, and
Okay.
there's no changing that. But I don't see any way where we can do that and save any kind of face.
That was my
you know.
concern, and I appreciate, I think you said about giving extra time for people to, I think that makes sense. I will be responding to the 3 interested parties, likely tomorrow.
Yeah.
To just let them know that I confirm I did receive something from them.
Mhm.
But anyone out there in BCTV land, please feel free to submit your letter of interest if you are interested in serving on this wonderful board. Sean?
I'm glad to hear that you've heard from 3 individuals from Brattleboro. I've been doing some phone calling to various people, seeing if they could drum up somebody. And I did a little thinking about the history. So the Articles of Agreement, question 1, November 19th, 2019. Should the town of Brattleboro get 2 additional directors on the board? And the vote was 467 yes, 349 no. So it wasn't a definitive thing. Hardly anybody voted. I mean, it's well under 1,000 people. So I'm wondering if, Brattleboro has a population of 12,000 something. And if nobody's interested, it'd be nice to know why. Why does nobody want to serve on this board? And so I think that's a really good question. When the last resignation happened, we had 3 individuals that ran. And the next, so I really wondered why. Why do people not want to accept $7,000 a year to sit on this board and do what we do from a population of 12,000 plus people?
Would you like to chair a subcommittee on figuring that out?
I would not. No, and I think you ought to just pursue the people that have expressed interest.
I will be responding to them,
Yeah.
but I do appreciate you bringing that up and maybe bringing it up at our next meeting as well.
Yeah, so I think that there's not, because the due date is so late in September, there's not excessive urgency on this
Right.
particular point, but the recommendations we had were very, very clearly laid out, and they had to do with having an email that went out to everyone in the district that had more information than just the little blurb that went in the paper, and that blurb was drafted, and we have a draft of it. And then the meet and greet suggestion, which I think our thoughts were a meet and greet at a public place such as the Works, and having it even a week before the due date. And then the third suggestion was in keeping with what Sean has already began to do, and I think many of us have done, just an encouragement to each board member to reach out to connections they have in Brattleboro. And because I think something that was very clear to Robin, because this was her path to being on the board, is some of us were asked specifically. We've heard this refrain. If we ask specifically to someone who we have a personal connection with, it's more effective than putting something in the paper. So that was the gist of it, and we can absolutely discuss it more. There's an email that's gone to all of you with the content, but rather than go through it now with a small crew, we could talk about it later.
Okay, thank you, Ruby. Tim?
Beyond filling the seats, I'm really interested to see what becomes of the meet and greet, because I think that the board, we have the 5-minute public discussion. I think it would be great that during the coming year, maybe this is a retreat topic, to have a meet and greet at the works with business leaders or nonprofit leaders, or to have an informal discussion place for the board to listen to folks on their thoughts on the education in the district. So I hope the meet and greet works well at the works. I'll try to be there. But this is something for us to think about, expanding beyond the CUSIC room to listening, what do they call them, listening sessions?
Yeah. One just can I reply? One thing that Robin and I discussed and talked about and debated a little bit was, where we settled was that we thought that a meet and greet should be a warned event, and which wouldn't have any actionable steps in it, but it would be a warned public engagement event. Because to the extent that there were 5 of us there, we want that to be, there to be clarity about that space. But ultimately, it could be that it's just 3, but that was what we discussed.
So just as a point of information, 4 makes for a quorum at this point, because we're a 9-member board.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure.
Warned easily as that can be warned as a quorum of board members may be present. And yeah, it should be warned, but it doesn't have to be minuted or recorded or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I do have something with the Social Justice Committee.
Okay.
So we did talk more about the 3 questions being on all the applications with our new HR director. And one of the questions we had asked him is if with the spacing, he said that there is a limit of 2 questions for the space, but there's a possibility to be able to add to a posting template. So I'd like to make a motion that we have the diversity questions on all of our applications. And then if possible, for definitely the first 2, but if possible, to add the 3rd question, which would be, where did you hear about this job posting?
Okay, a motion has been made to include the 3 questions. I don't have them in. I'm sorry, Anne, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was having trouble with my microphone. Yeah, this is an action and we can't take an action without warning it on the agenda, which is, I definitely support it and would like it please placed on the next agenda.
Thank you very much, Anne, for that reminder. So Eva, it appears that we cannot address your motion, but when I send out the email asking for agenda items, if that is not on there, please feel free to remind me that that should be on there.
Okay.
Okay.
All caps.
In all caps, Kim said yes, okay. Okay.
Can I ask a question about it? Eva, I know I was at the Social Justice Committee meeting, and and it was a great meeting. And the HR director, the new HR director, was there and gave some presentation and feedback. Do you think? I mean, hopefully he will be at the next meeting, but do you think it's possible to have a proposal from him, or like the words that you used had an "if possible" in it, and I wonder if it would be possible to track down that information and solidify it before we have a motionable action. I know you might not be able to answer that definitively, but it just feels like that would be a nice thing to have happen before we take action.
I'm just a little bit, I'm a little bit confused about the question. I'm sorry. So you want him to provide a proposal about the?
I think my so what it sounded like you were proposing was to include two questions, and then if possible add something at the end that would ask the question of where did you hear about this, and that seemed like something that he in the meeting he said that he hoped that was possible. But a hope for that being possible, and if it is possible, are all those are not definitive, and so it would be nice if he was prepared to speak to that more definitively when we are making an action.
Yeah, to say whether yes it's possible, no it's not possible.
Right.
So yes or no.
So Eva, if you would send me the blurb of what your motion was to be, and I can forward that to Mark, and he can then forward it to the HR director. And maybe if there's, maybe that question of if possible can be addressed and then responded to at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Liz, did you have a comment?
I had a question. I would like to ask the committee if they would consider recording their meetings again, because I can't get to them and I like to hear all the nuance in the discussions. You recorded the first one, but not the most recent one.
Which committee is that?
The social justice.
Okay. Oh, okay.
May I interject that at the end of that, so the last social justice meeting, I think it was only me, Robin, and Eva left. Robin said, "Oh my God, I meant to record that, I forgot," and asked for support in reminding her if it wasn't done. So I think, Liz, that Robin's intention as, note taker in that had been to record it, and she apologized to the people who were in the room. I think it was after the meeting had closed, possibly even, but
okay,
yeah.
Thanks, Ruby, because the nuance is really important in that committee.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Can I just make an announcement related to Social Justice Committee that on August 22, the Social Justice Committee and the Policy and Amendment Committee will be meeting together along with the superintendent, along with the head of HR, Michael Kelleher, in order to continue the given discussion having to do with hiring practices, as well as looking at policy D1. D is in dog 1, and I don't have the title. It's a recruitment of personnel, which seems to be an appropriate place to take a look at hiring practices. So that will be on August 22.
At what time?
2:30.
Okay.
It'll be a 2:30 meeting. It'll be a regular policy meeting, 2:30 to 4:30, and then later that evening we have a board meeting. And with transparency and full disclosure, I am not sure that I will be present at that meeting. But the issues stand as they are. I don't need to be present.
Okay, any other subcommittee meetings? Okay. Moving on to the board retreat, August 11th, 5 to 9, unless we can get it done sooner. And maybe Ruby can get to the Barbie thing.
Definitely.
No, not gonna happen.
So we will be meeting at EES. They have graciously offered us a space that we can meet there. And I've sent the information out to the board, how to get there, the address and the one suggestion that I will make, and Deborah may have more from, we just met with the moderator today. We had a meeting earlier with the moderator, but one of the things is the manual. Please bring your manual. Even if you are not an expert on where to find everything in there, hopefully it's gonna be something that people are really using as a resource. And there may be some fun stuff involving the manual.
Oh, yes. But very specifically.
2 days to memorize.
If you, very specifically, take a look at what works and what doesn't work in this, because this is truly a rough draft. It's a first take, and I already see like things that could be done, but that's a little obsessive compulsive. So take a look at what you need, how this works for you, please. So we need to have the manuals with us.
Yes.
For the fun stuff.
It's all gonna be fun.
It's all gonna be fun, yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say the manuals are a work of art. It's amazing. Thank you, Deborah, for all your hard work creating it. Being new to the board, it's been such a good foundation for me. So I'm so grateful that you did all that work for that manual. And every time I open it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that.
Well,
I can't believe the work. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I'm going to say that I have to thank several people for contributions. This is not original. This is a compilation of what exists out there in the world that we would have to go to so many different sources to find. So that was the hard stuff, trying to figure out what to include and why to include it. So again, this is my perspective. It needs to broaden out.
Anything else on the board retreat or the wonderful, exciting fun we're gonna have with the manual? Okay, and it sounds like it may be in need of your services.
Madam Chair, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
All those in favor of adjourning for the evening at 7:58 in the evening, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? No, there are no abstentions or
Less than 2 hours.
oppositions. So we are now done at 7:58. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Call the
Thank you
question.
for your patience.
2:30.